Alright, this is What If Deku Had the Zombie King Quirk. I'm going to go ahead and give a heads up. This might get graphic and display tons of different violence in the story. So, viewer discretion is advised. Okay, so we'll start off with Izuku. When he was 4, he got up very happy thinking he's gonna get an awesome quirk, just like Kachan. And he was so happy and giddy, he walked out of his room, went down the hall, banged on his mom's door, saying, "Let's go to the quirk doctor." And Inko was just waking up and said, "Okay, we'll go. Let's go eat first." She ended up going downstairs and making him some food, eggs and bacon. They started eating, they got dressed, Midoriya got dressed into his usual outfit, his kindergarten attire. He decided to go ahead and, get in the car, because he was super excited, so he went out of the house and went in the driveway to the back of the car, and Inko was, walking there, got in the car. They started driving towards their, local doctor, and once they walked into the building, they could hear tons of excited, 4-year-olds, and he was one of the most excited ones. He was smiling, jumping up and down, thinking to himself, "I'm gonna be exactly like All Might, my #1 hero." And yes, this is where all of his dreams were going to be crushed. Unlike in canon, this is completely crushed. Okay, so his mom and Deku were called in to the office, to Mr. Ujiko's office, Dr. Ujiko's office, and then Dr. Ujiko examined Midoriya and was shocked that he couldn't find a single quirk in him, and was very, disappointed, because he knew he was going to have to tell, the mother that this kid is completely quirkless. And so he goes up towards her and says that Midoriya is completely quirkless. There's no quirk, so don't expect one. And he should probably dash any hopes or dreams of being a hero. He'll just be a liability. And then Deku, Midoriya heard this. I'm gonna call him Deku sometimes. If you don't like it, get over it. It's a name that everyone usually calls him. Alright, so Deku is just devastated. And it doesn't help when he gets his arm grabbed by Inko, and they go out of the hospital, and she goes out in complete rage. And they get in the car. She doesn't speak a word to him. They drive home, and literally, he goes into the actual, house. So does Inko. And then Izuku asked, "What are we gonna have for, dinner?" And she was like, "You don't need any food. You're a complete waste of space. Why don't you just leave?" And, he just went up to his room, went to sleep, didn't have any, food or anything, and he was completely devastated that his own mom said that. So, after that happened, in the middle of the night, he heard footsteps creeping up to his room, and he thought it was just his mom trying to tuck him in. She opened the door, and, Izuku was pretending to be asleep so he could, scare her or something. But yeah, she turned him over to the side where he was facing her, and then picked out a pillow behind her, and then started trying to smother him. And let me just tell you, he was suffocating. He was feeling all the breath coming out of him, and he could feel the pure force that she was putting on him. And she was like, I should never have had a quirkless child. Something that is inconceivable. Something so disgusting that I'd rather have a villain. An actual child with a villainous quirk, or a child that would grow up as a villain, than someone that's quirkless. And she truly thought this, just so you know. And she said it out loud. And Midoriya, in his mind, was saying to himself, no, I can become a hero. I can still do it. Trying to say he can become a hero, and he was also thinking of how to survive to become one. So he started, punching his mom with his little fists, and really didn't do anything. Because think about it, he's still only 4. And all of a sudden, police come in because they could hear all the muffles, because, Bakugo's mom was literally right next door, and she was in her room, but she could hear the muffling. So she called the police. They bust down the door, they run upstairs, and they see Izuku's mom trying to strangle Izuku. And they literally pull her off of him. And then she says, I had to get rid of this quirkless kid. He shouldn't even exist. And then the officer that literally, was holding her just let go and said, you're completely right. And Izuku felt his heart drop. So he was very, angry because an officer is letting his own mom kill him. Which she does proceed to do until the other officers come in and stop her. And then, when she mentions that he's completely quirkless, all the officers except for one let go. That one literally drags her into the cop car. And the rest of the officers pretty much look at Deku with disdain. And then they escort him out and put him into the police car. They drive all the way away from Midoriya's house, and he looked outside of the window, seeing the house go away in the distance, and seeing Bakugo's aunt right there with Kachan outside, wondered what was happening, was what Kachan was doing. They drive all the way to, the police station, and they explain what happened, and yeah, let me just go ahead and tell you, it was not a good thing. When they found out that the kid was quirkless, more than half of the police station basically were like, it's completely justified then. I mean, there's nowhere way his life's gonna go anywhere. It's just a dead end. That's what they all literally thought and said. And Izuku was hearing all of this, because they were saying it right in front of him. And he was devastated. And he was crying tears. The one officer that actually, helped him before, actually got her off, was named Hana. Hana went up towards Izuku, comforted him, and yeah, they all started talking and stuff, and they were like, "Why, Hana? Why are you cheering up this quirkless loser? This waste of life." It's exactly what they all said. And Hana was like, "Every life is precious, quirkless or not, villainous quirk or hero quirk, or just a normal quirk or weak quirk. It doesn't matter," is what she said. And they all laughed. I'll be honest, most of the police were corrupted as fuck in this My Hero What If. So, yeah, she literally, decided she'll take Izuku with her to an orphanage or something. But as soon as the orphanages, heard that he was quirkless, they immediately denied access to the orphanages. They automatically denied access. Like, they literally said that he cannot go here because we're at maximum capacity or something. They made so many bullshit excuses, and Midoriya was seeing all of this at a very young age. So he had to stay with Hana at the time. And he went back to his normal school with, Kacchan and them. And they didn't really, know what happened because all the adults and stuff were keeping a secret from them. And then, when he went back to school, Kacchan was bullying him even worse and brutal. Burning his skin, all of that, kicking him into the trees at recess, bashing his head, doing all of this at the playground. Midoriya literally was just in such a state of depression, and he literally just stopped feeling anything. He really couldn't feel a single thing of pain that was happening to him. And Bakugo found that pretty weird because he's not screaming in pain or anything anymore after a few months of this happening repeatedly. And Bakugo continuously, throughout the years, bullied him, all the way up until the beginning of the anime, where he was in not in UA, but was about to try to go to UA. And he walks up all the way to school, goes into school, walks all the way up the stairs to his classroom, and starts, sitting down at his desk. And when he sits down at his desk, everyone basically looked at him and started throwing stuff at him. Math books, textbooks, pretty much anything they could get their hands on. And this was way worse than in canon. And just so you know, Bakugo started early doing explosions towards him, and Izuku just didn't even flinch anymore. His eyes were in such a state of depression like this. He just didn't care. So Bakugo decided to ante it up a bit and decided to punch him with an explosion quirk activated, and that put a scar on his face, a little scar on his face, which would be healed later. But Izuku literally just got back up, grabbed Kacchan, and fucking started beating the shit out of him. But it really didn't do much because Kacchan was also exploding the fuck out of him. And then threw him towards a chair, and the teacher literally walked in and threw the papers saying, "I know everyone wants to become heroes, so I'm not even going to bother with any of this bullshit." And then he looks through the files and stuff and says, there's two people that wanted to apply to UA, and that is Bakugo and Izuku. And he was like chuckling, like laughing out loud, and everyone else did. And then Bakugo, who already was starting to beat the shit out of him, literally decided to punch him more and more violently while I'm at it. And the teacher's watching this and just doesn't stop it. They literally think that anyone that's quirkless is complete garbage. And do you care if garbage gets destroyed in a dumpster or a compactor? No, you don't. That's what they thought. And Midoriya is just building up all this despair, hatred, all of it. And then Bakugo finally is done beating the shit out of him, throws him to the ground, goes into his notebook about like all the ideas if he wants to become a hero and stuff, all of that, and sets it on fire. Just explodes it, throws it out the window, and then before leaving himself, said the same thing he said in the anime. If you want to become a hero, there is a way. And then Midoriya's eyes widened, and then he said, how do I become a hero? He said that in like a very, you know, believing voice, wanting any type of hope or any semblance of hope. Even if it came from Bakugo, he was willing to accept anything. If it means he could be able to become a hero. And then Bakugo said, well, maybe if you jump off the roof and hope in your next life you become a hero. Or a person with a powerful quirk. And then Midoriya literally just crashes down. In the inside, he's crashing down to reality. His soul basically is just dispersing. His eyes were even more lifeless now than before. And Bakugo saw this. And he smiled a little, but then he saw how his eyes were completely lifeless like a corpse. Which he actually started to feel bad about on the inside. But he just shrugged it off and walked away with his posse. And then Midoriya goes all the way down there. Goes all the way down outside the school, running down the halls and stuff, grabbing the book, and trying to, dust it off. Nothing worked. It was completely burnt by the time he got down there. And then he, looked at the little pages, and he just wondered, could I ever become a hero? Is this really the way my life is going to be? Pushed around by everyone, everything, an outcast, someone that doesn't belong to the world. He started thinking all of this stuff, and wondering, what did he ever do to deserve any of this? And he honestly was in even more despair. He decided to go ahead and go home. He got up, walked towards his house, tried to walk towards his house, but took a long way because he felt really depressed. And, wanted to have more time to think about this before he got to Hana. Which Hana lived in Inko's old house, believe it or not. So, he, walked down the actual bridge. Like, under the bridge. And a slime villain popped out of the actual sewer. And went up towards Izuku. And the slime villain said, you look very pathetic. But I can use your body to get away from this freak. And then decided to grab him and suffocate him. The only thing is, Izuku just didn't care. He already had lifeless eyes. He just wanted it all to end. So he just literally let it go in. And he literally just wanted to die at this point. And the slime noticed this and actually even felt sympathy towards Izuku. And then All Might came out of nowhere and punched the slime, making it splatter against the wall. And Izuku's eyes lit up and said, All Might. And then All Might literally looked at him and says, Oh, young man, are you okay? While he was getting up the actual villain. And then Midoriya immediately just wanted to ask him a question. And unlike in canon, All Might's time didn't really run out yet. So, he ended up talking to All Might, saying, Is it possible to become a hero without a quirk? Then All Might said, No. And unlike in canon, he didn't just say, become an officer or anything. He's like, no, it's not possible to become anything without a quirk. Honestly, people without a quirk should probably just kill themselves. They'd be better off so people don't have to save them. And then Midoriya, who once lit up towards All Might, literally his hopes that he just had faded away. And then he literally was in a little fit of rage and said, You call yourself a hero, correct? And All Might says, Yes, I am the #1 hero, a symbol of peace. And then he's like, You just told a kid to go kill themselves. And you're still thinking of yourself as a hero. And then he was like, I don't see a kid. I see a creature, if you're quirkless. You truly are Quirkless. You're not a kid or a person. You're a creature or a thing. And All Might just walked away. Didn't even jump out of the way. Then Midoriya had pure hatred in his eyes, and anger and despair. And he just went home to Hana, talked to Hana, told Hana about all what happened. Hana felt very, very depressed about what happened. And, went to hug Izuku. And then said, dinner will be ready in a bit. You can just go to your room and hang out or something. Play some video games, just take your mind off of it. And then Midoriya was very happy that he had Hana. The only thing that he thought in his life was pure, just very kind-hearted. And he went up to his room, opened the door, sat down on the bed, played a few video games, but then couldn't help but hear Hana talking to someone on the phone. So he got curious, opened the door, literally went down the stairs, sneaked down the stairs, put his, put himself beside the wall where the steps were, and then decided to try to, spy on what was happening. She was talking to her friend on the phone, saying, he's a good kid, but honestly, I don't think he'll become anything. I don't believe in him at all. I care for him, it's just, I don't believe in him. He's just a waste of space or life. I feel sorry for him, that's the reason why I took him in. I don't honestly care for him, it's just pity. And then Midoriya, who heard this, walked out, started walking towards the door. She saw him and then was like, dropped the phone and said, I didn't mean that. And then he just ran out of the door, just ran out of the house. And she was screaming for him to come back and that she's sorry. He just ran. He went up towards the high school building. The building where Bakugo said to just jump off of. Started heading towards there. Went all the way inside. Went all the way towards the front door. Busted the lock. Barged himself in. Because he found a rock and busted it. Walked all the way up the stairs slowly, contemplating on how his life was wrong. His mom tried to kill him. His dad left him. No one believed him. The police didn't even do anything for him. Except for Hana, the one that he thought was pure, actually cared for him. He found out that she didn't. His former best friend always bullied him. Always scarred him. Scared him. And just abused in every form and way. And then he also thought of the words of All Might, saying that he could never become a hero or anything. And he finally made it to the roof, walked up to the edge, and in his mind said, this is where I should just end all my suffering. And he took one step off the edge and started to plummet. As soon as he fell down, he started thinking, finally, some peace and quiet. And then he splat to the ground. And the school cameras caught all of this. And he was muttering all of this while he was walking. He splat to the ground. The next day, the school heard of this and saw what happened. And Bakugo, who was just coming in to school, was wondering what happened to the nerd. Because when he went to class, he didn't see him the entire time. Everyone was so cheerful and stuff. And Bakugo just wondered what happened, and then he thought about the words he said. He was like, no. He's not... He wouldn't do it. And then, all of a sudden, she sees Hana. appear, and he asked what happened to the nerd. I asked Hana that, and then she explained that, well, he killed himself. And Bakugo felt this to his core because he knew he was probably the cause, which he definitely was. And he was like, I don't believe you. And then Hana was like, then go ask the principal. I'm pretty sure he'll show you the recording if you ask. It sounded like he really cared. She walked away, and Bakugo went up to the principal's office, asked to see the recording. The principal literally said no, because he was a minor and stuff. So, at nighttime, Bakugo went back to the school, barged in, exploded the lock, barged in, went up to the security camera, erased him going in. And Bakugo was actually relatively smart. He looked at the camera, you know, from yesterday, and saw how Midoriya just broke in, was walking all the way up to the roof, heard every single word that he said, and Bakugo was devastated. He was in tears, crying. Inside he was just in despair, because he realized what he just did to his best friend. He realized all of his arrogance, all of the cockiness, all of the abuse, his stupid inferiority complex. Because when Deku was a kid, he was always better than him. And he just broke down. And then he saw how Midoriya just plummeted, just walked off the edge and plummeted. And they even froze it before he fell, and saw that he had a smile on his face, and tears through his eyes. And then saw him splat, and that's where the cameras just cut off. There's nothing else after that. But the body was gone the next day. And he was wondering just what happened. And he was just devastated. He went back home. He, was in just despair, constant tears going through his eyes because of what he just caused. And he was going through flashbacks of where he used to always call him Kachan, where he used to always, have that wonderful smile on his face. And then he looked through his memories of how he made him in so much despair. He was just very much just reflecting on this. He walked back home. Mitsuki was worried about him and asked what happened. And he explained about what happened to Midoriya. She hugged him, and then he was like, I don't deserve this sympathy. I don't deserve anything. And he was crying. She was patting him. And then he said, I gotta explain what happened. I just can't keep this in. He explained how, he was bullying him for all those years, causing constant scorch marks on him, scarring him, all because of his own inferiority complex and the fact that he couldn't just get over it, and made his own friend go into the depths of despair, saying he could never become a hero, he couldn't become anything, and he kept on calling him Deku, all of this stuff, and Katsuki was shocked about what he had done. And then he went up to the part that got her the most riled up, where he burned the notebook, threw it out the window, and when Midoriya ended up, having those lifeless eyes, and then he said, if you want to become a hero, there is one way. Midoriya's brightness and happiness came back for just a little glimpse. And then he said, if you jump off the roof and go kill yourself and hope you have a quirk in your next life. And then, when he looked back, he noticed that his eyes were so lifeless. And when he explained this to Mitsuki just straight up slapped the fuck out of him. And told him what happened to his family. Like what his mom did. Bakugo didn't know this, thought that it was like an aunt or relative. That was a cover-up story for her. That he was living with. And Bakugo felt so bad. And he, in his head, he was like, I don't really deserve to become a hero, but I'll try to become one for you, Midoriya. Went up to his room. He laid down, cried into his pillow the entire night. And Midoriya woke up. And he was in an unfamiliar place. And heard a strange voice saying, "Don't you want revenge? I can help with that." And that's where I ended up in this all off. On the cliffhanger. Who was this strange man? Find out next time on What If Deku Had the Zombie King Quirk. And I'll explain the quirks in the next part. His quirk in the next part. Until then, good night, ladies and gentlemen.